Now, I used to fight nukes, but nukes are at the table. There's no question about it. If you're serious about forestalling the worst consequences of climate change, you simply can't rule out nuclear power. You just can't. If you read the science, if you take it to heart, you can't. I don't care how many problems there are with nuclear power plants. The one thing that they don't have in terms of their emissions is carbon dioxide. There's no argument about that. So what are you going to do with the nuclear option, though? The lead time for nuclear plants is 10 to 15 years in this country. France has 70% of the electricity from nuclear, so they've made a huge bet on nuclear. Well, in this country, it's 10 to 15 years to build a nuclear power plant. They're fiendishly expensive. They're way beyond coal or oil or natural gas or wind or solar or any other form of energy. They're just fiendishly expensive. And even with an indemnity, even with a cap on liability, which we call the Price-Anderson Act, they're still a high-risk adventure. It only takes one accident. When the 3 Mile Island accident occurred, that ended the nuclear industry in the United States of America. Not a single nuclear plant was ever put online after that accident. Now they're starting to come back. 20 or so applications are pending at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and there will be more. Some of those are going to get through, some of those are going to get built. And in a world where we're told that the threat of terrorism is one of the highest threats that we have to face, and loose nukes and terrorists getting their hands on nuclear material is the greatest of all the dangers, you have to take on board the increased risk and security that's going to be required to maintain a nuclear fleet of power plants in the United States and around the world moving all this material. So that's another tough choice. How about wind? To just quickly move along and maybe talk about some options that are a little more pleasant to think about. Well, we know that there is enough wind potential in the Great Plains of the United States to meet all the electrical needs of the United States, period. There's enough wind blowing down through the Great Plains where I grew up, and I can vouch for the fact that there's a lot of wind out there, to power the United States. T. Boone Pickens knows that. That's why he's proposed 100,000 windmill turbines throughout the Great Plains. He wants an Apollo-level project, Apollo program project to build wind over the next 10 years. Al Gore's speech when he said we can be on renewables in 10 years relies very, very heavily on wind. But you folks in Massachusetts know how difficult it is to build wind plants. Off the coast anyway, near Nantucket anyway, and Martha's Vineyard anyway. In Vermont, we have the same thing. 3 commercial wind projects have gone down to defeat because Vermonters are very jealous about their ridge lines. But if you're talking about energy supply, and you wanted to avoid all these nasty consequences of coal and nuclear that I've tried to sketch for you, well, then obviously wind has got to be, a major component of that. So you do need an Apollo program level investment, private and public investment, to break through the storage problem and the grid problem. We do not have a transmission system. Well, we don't even have a transmission system that's adequate for the existing fleet of conventional power plants, let alone wind energy. But here's where the new bridge technologies come into play. Plug-in hybrids. There's one on the market right now as we speak, Toyota, Prius. I got the first edition Prius in the parking lot. I love it. It's the best car I've ever had. It's getting 49 miles per gallon, 7 years and 150,000 miles later. But the next generation, the plug-in hybrids are the key, okay? So you plug them in at night when energy demand is low. You charge up the batteries. The batteries are good for 40 miles. That's 90% of the commuter distance in the United States, 40 miles. If you have a battery that can get you 40 miles, you will never put a drop of gas in it. That's plug-in hybrid. But it's also a storage system, do you see? If everybody in America had a plug-in hybrid, boom. Now you're talking, and you interface that with the grid, now you have a storage system, plus you have a transportation system, and you've gotten rid of petroleum. That's what we're talking about.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, the leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.